A painting can be worth more hidden than it ever was on a wall. In 2017, a small image of Christ sold for $450 million, then vanished from public view. The strangest part is not the price. It is how many powerful people seemed relieved when nobody could see it. The work was called Salvator Mundi, savior of the world. For centuries, people argued over whether Leonardo da Vinci truly touched it. That uncertainty should have weakened the sale. Instead, it created the perfect luxury weapon, a masterpiece wrapped in doubt, status, and silence. Before the world knew its name, the painting was battered, overpainted, and nearly forgotten. It once changed hands for less than the cost of a luxury dinner. Then experts cleaned the surface, the face emerged, and the art market smelled something bigger than beauty. It smelled a crown. Leonardo is not just an artist in this story. He is a man with only a handful of surviving paintings. That scarcity changes everything. Billionaires can buy yachts, islands, aircraft, and towers. But a Leonardo is different. There may be no second chance in an entire lifetime. Christie's understood the psychology perfectly. They did not sell it like an old master. They sold it like a trophy, placing it beside contemporary icons and using one phrase that hit collectors like a challenge: the last Da Vinci. In luxury, last often means priceless. On auction night, the bids climbed with an almost unreal rhythm. 100 million became 200, then 300. Each pause felt like a closed door opening in another palace. By the final hammer, the number had become larger than the painting itself. The buyer was officially hidden behind layers of agents and paperwork. But the art world began pointing towards Saudi power, royal ambition, and a country preparing to announce itself as a cultural superpower. The painting was no longer just art. It was diplomacy in a frame. Then came the perfect twist. The Louvre Abu Dhabi announced that the painting would be shown. Visitors expected to stand in front of the most expensive painting ever sold. But the date arrived. The exhibition changed, and Salvator Mundi did not appear. That absence created a bigger spectacle than any unveiling. If the painting had appeared, experts would judge it. Cameras would capture every crack. Critics would ask dangerous questions. Hidden, it became untouchable. Hidden, every rumor added another layer of value. Some reports placed it on a superyacht. Others imagined it inside a climate-controlled palace. The truth is more interesting. Nobody outside a tiny circle can confirm where it is. In a world of satellites and leaks, one painting managed to disappear in plain sight. Collectors usually buy art to display taste. This purchase did the opposite. It displayed control. Owning a masterpiece is power, but denying the world access to it is another kind of power. It says the public conversation can wait outside the gate. The controversy only grew because authentication is never a quiet subject. Some scholars defended the attribution to Leonardo. Others believed assistants, restorers, or workshop hands played a much larger role. At $450 million, disagreement becomes financial dynamite. The face itself adds to the tension. It is calm, frontal, almost too still. One hand blesses, the other holds a crystal orb that has made experts argue for years. If Leonardo painted it, why does the glass behave so strangely? Every detail became evidence. Here is the trap. If the painting is shown, every camera in the world can attack it. If it remains hidden, the owner protects the myth. Luxury often works this way. The less access people have, the more they imagine what must be behind the door. Halfway through the story, the question changes. It is not who bought the painting. It is why anyone would spend that much and then remove it from view. The answer may be reputation, politics, faith, speculation, or fear. It may be all of them at once. Saudi Arabia has been investing heavily in culture, tourism, and symbols of global prestige. A Leonardo would fit that strategy like a crown jewel. But a disputed Leonardo creates risk. It can inspire awe, or it can invite ridicule from the same elite audience it was meant to impress. Museums are not neutral rooms. They are stages where countries perform identity. When a masterpiece appears in a national museum, it tells the world, we belong at the center of history. But if the masterpiece is questioned, the stage becomes dangerous. This is why the hidden painting became a modern luxury parable. The object is priceless because it might be Leonardo. It is risky because it might not be fully Leonardo. And it is magnetic because the world cannot stop trying to look at something it is not allowed to see. There is also a financial game underneath the drama. The top art market runs on confidence. A masterpiece is not liquid like a stock. Its value depends on belief, narrative, provenance, and the willingness of the next billionaire to accept the story. When you hide a controversial asset, you freeze the story at the most favorable moment. The auction record remains. The mystery remains. The owner does not have to answer every expert. Silence becomes a preservation strategy, and secrecy becomes part of the artwork. Imagine the alternative. The painting appears tomorrow under perfect lighting. High-resolution images spread worldwide in minutes. Specialists debate restoration, anatomy, symbolism, and damage. One harsh consensus could erase billions in prestige. even if the canvas itself never changes. That is why access is the real luxury here. Not the gilded frame, not the auction record, not even the possible Leonardo signature. Access somewhere. A few people may be able to stand inches away from a picture the rest of the world knows only through reproductions. The painting also exposes a brutal truth about modern collecting. At the highest level, art is not bought only with money. It is bought with lawyers, secrecy, logistics, diplomacy, insurance, storage, and narrative control. The visible canvas is only the front door. Every year the mystery continues. Salvator Mundi becomes less like a museum object and more like a legend. People do not ask what color the background is. They ask where it is. They ask who has seen it. They ask whether it will ever return. And legends are powerful because they do not need proof every morning. They live in repetition. A whisper in an auction house. A rumor in a palace. A line in a museum schedule that appears, disappears, and leaves the world staring at an empty space. If the painting is ever shown again, the room will be packed before the doors open. Not because everyone loves Renaissance art, but because secrecy has transformed it into a global event. People will come to judge the painting and to judge the people who hid it. But maybe the owner understands something the market does not want to admit. The most expensive artwork in the world may be more valuable as a question than as an answer. Once everyone sees it clearly, the spell changes. Mystery can be monetized only while it remains incomplete. That is the luxury lesson. The richest people do not only buy things, they buy distance. Distance from scrutiny, distance from crowds, distance from ordinary rules. In this story, the distance between the public and the painting may be the real masterpiece. So the next time someone calls Salvator Mundi the most expensive painting ever sold, remember the stranger title it earned afterward. The painting the world paid attention to because almost nobody was allowed to look. $450 million bought the object. Secrecy bought the myth. And that is why the story keeps growing. A normal masterpiece becomes history when it hangs in a museum. This one became history by disappearing. Subscribe for the next hidden luxury story, because the most powerful rooms in the world are usually the ones we never get to enter. There is another reason the mystery refuses to die. The painting sits at the collision point of faith, money, and empire. Any one of those subjects can create obsession. Put all three inside the same frame, then remove the frame from public view, and the silence becomes louder every year. The restoration story adds its own shadow. Old paintings are never frozen in time. They are repaired, cleaned, repainted, and interpreted by human hands. With Salvator Mundi, every restored surface became a battlefield between believers and skeptics, and the owner inherited that battlefield with the purchase. For a museum, that debate can be productive. Debate sells tickets, books, lectures, and prestige. For a royal buyer, debate is more dangerous. It can turn a symbol of cultural confidence into a public trial, where every specialist becomes a witness and every photograph becomes evidence. This is why private ownership changes the rules. A museum must explain. A palace can refuse. A public institution answers to curators, donors, critics, and visitors. A private collector answers mostly to appetite, discretion, and the small circle allowed through the door. Insurance alone would be a quiet drama. A painting at this level cannot simply travel like normal cargo. It needs climate control, armed logistics, legal paperwork, condition reports, and a chain of custody so precise that every movement becomes an operation. Then there is the spiritual layer. This is not a yacht, a diamond, or a penthouse. It is an image of Christ, bought through one of the most aggressive luxury auctions in history. That contradiction gives the story a charge that no simple trophy purchase could have. The orb in the painting keeps returning like a clue. It represents the world, held in one hand. For critics, it is a technical question. For the story, it is almost too perfect. The most expensive painting on earth shows a figure holding the world, while the world cannot hold the painting. If it reappears in a Saudi museum one day, the message will be enormous. Not just that a country owns a masterpiece, but that it can choose the timing of global attention. The reveal itself would become a diplomatic event, a cultural announcement, and a market shock. If it never reappears, the message is different but just as powerful. It means the highest form of luxury may be disappearance. The ability to remove an object from the world's eyes while keeping the world's imagination locked on it is a kind of ownership money rarely admits. That is what separates this story from ordinary rich person spectacle. Most luxury content shows abundance, more marble, more ocean, more speed, more square footage. Salvator Mundi shows absence. It proves that nothing can be more captivating than a closed door with the right rumor behind it. The art market understands this instinct better than almost any industry. Scarcity is not only how many objects exist, it is how often the public is allowed to encounter them. A masterpiece seen every day becomes familiar. A masterpiece withheld becomes a legend people chase. For the viewer, the lesson is unsettling. We think value comes from proof, transparency, and access. But at the top of the luxury world, value often grows from controlled uncertainty. The unknown is not a problem to solve. It is part of the product. So the hidden royal painting is not only an art mystery, it is a mirror. It shows how wealth can turn visibility on and off, how culture can become strategy, and how one small panel can make the entire world stare at a wall where nothing appears.